If you do the things we need to do so that America is no longer held at risk by your nuclear weapons arsenal, and that you get rid of your CBW program and missiles that threaten the world, we'll ensure that your people have the opportunity for the greatness that I know Chairman Kim wants them to have.
In an interview with CBS News on Sunday, Pompeo added North Korea would get much-needed energy assistance from private capital, speculating that one day the North may even rival the economic prosperity of the South.
They will get private capital that comes in. North Korea is desperately in need of energy support, electricity for their people. They're in great need of agricultural equipment and technology, the finest from the Midwest that I come from. We can deliver that. And as I said earlier this week, we can create conditions for real economic prosperity for the North Korean people that will rival that of the South.
Pompeo's remarks come despite the Trump administration's previous emphasis on not following the paths of past U.S. governments that offered economic aid to Pyongyang in return for incremental steps to end its nuclear program. However, Pompeo insists the model used by the Trump administration is fundamentally different, and they are hopeful the outcome will be fundamentally different as well. Will such a massive change be seen in a country long known as the Hermit Kingdom? Most experts believe it's too early to say, but we may be closer to having an answer to that question after the North Korea-U.S. summit that's set for June 12th in Singapore. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has also been doing the rounds of American news networks to discuss North Korea with a big summit now less than a month away. Speaking to ABC News on Sunday, Bolton said the U.S. wants to see the denuclearization process so completely underway that it's irreversible. He said that's something that has to happen before the benefits starts to flow to North Korea, and asked what the U.S. is prepared to offer Pyongyang if the regime follows through with full denuclearization. Bolton said Washington is prepared to open to trade and investment with the country as soon as it can. North Korea has released detailed plans on how it'll decommission its nuclear test site. It says it'll collapse the tunnels at its nuclear test site with explosives and then take down all other related facilities in the ceremony next week. And journalists from 5 nations are welcome to watch. Our Oh Jung-hee reports.
The date is finally out. North Korea's foreign ministry announced a specific schedule of when and how it'll dismantle its northern Punggye-ri nuclear test site.
A ceremony for dismantling the nuclear test site will take place between May 23rd and 25th, depending on weather conditions.
Pyongyang says explosives will be used to collapse all the tunnels at the test site. Entry to the site will be completely blocked, and the observation facilities, research institutes, and guard units will be removed. As all this takes place, guards and researchers will be taken out, and the surrounding area will be completely shut down. To show this transparently, the North says it'll invite journalists from overseas for on-site coverage. But the invitation is going out only to those from 5 countries, South Korea, the United States, the United Kingdom, China, and Russia, due to the test site's small size. In 2008, when the North destroyed a cooling tower for a nuclear reactor in Yeongbyon, the regime invited 1 broadcaster each from Seoul, Washington, Tokyo, and Beijing, but it remains to be seen what will happen this time. The regime is to provide the press with accommodation, chartered flights from Beijing to North Korea's eastern city of Wonsan, and special trains to move from Wonsan to the test site. A press center is also to be set up so journalists can file their reports, meaning the dismantlement process is not likely to be broadcast live, but as recorded footage. Views are that this action by the regime shows a firm will to denuclearize, especially because once the site is demolished, it'll be difficult for Pyongyang to find another spot with the right conditions to replace it. The U.S. has recently told the North that if the regime completely denuclearizes, it'll be able to achieve economic development and even prosperity. So Pyongyang may be wanting to give out a clear sign that it's denuclearizing and request that the U.S. take sincere steps in return. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
And staying with that story, South Korea's top office has welcomed North Korea's announcement over the weekend. It says it hopes that the closure of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site marks the beginning of a journey for a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. Our Moon Ganyang with the details.
South Korea's Blue House welcomed North Korea's announcement outlining steps to dismantle its nuclear testing site.
We believe such plans demonstrate North Korea's willingness to fulfill their promise made at the Inter-Korean Summit through action beyond words.
The South Presidential Office assessed the move as a good confidence-building measure between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump ahead of the historic summit next month.
During the Inter-Korean Summit, North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un said he would dismantle its northern nuclear test site in May and that he will invite experts and journalists from South Korea and the U.S. to disclose this process transparently to the international community.
Note the word experts in the April 29th briefing by Mr. Moon's office and the lack thereof in the North's statement Saturday night. When asked about this, a key official at the Blue House said, although unsure of the North's true intentions, he could only imagine that it's to show Kim's willingness to denuclearize quickly and clearly in a transparent manner. He added an inspection and verification process involving experts would take months and years, stressing this is only the first step in a long denuclearization process. However, international experts will have to get involved at some point, he said. Last month, South Korean President Moon Jae-in asked the United Nations to help verify the shutdown.
We hope the explosive sound of dynamite blasting the Punggye-ri tunnel will mark the first salute for a journey toward a nuclear-free Korean peninsula.
Now, contrary to some analysts' view that North Korea's dismantlement of its nuclear testing site is inconsequential and does not represent a material step towards full denuclearization, the Blue House views it as an important step nonetheless, as a nuclear test pause would at least inhibit the development of a more advanced nuclear warhead design. Moon Ganyong, Arirang News, the Blue House.
And watchers around the world were quick to pick up on North Korea's announcement on demolishing its nuclear test site. And a clear message by the regime, North Korea has invited reporters from only 5 countries, 4 of the 6 party nations, and the UK. Not on the list, Japan. Our Lee Ji-won tells us why.
North Korea's surprise announcement was welcomed by major stakeholders in the issue, especially U.S. President Donald Trump. On Saturday, Trump tweeted his thanks to the North for its decision, calling it a very smart and gracious gesture. The announcement comes exactly a month before the first ever North Korea-U.S. summit set to be held in Singapore. Some observers say this shows how determined the North is to denuclearize, despite not being immediately rewarded for steps taken in that direction. In the U.S., an official from the White House National Security Council reportedly said the council welcomes Pyongyang's announcement. The official also stressed that a thorough verification and inspection by international experts is key to denuclearizing Pyongyang. North Korea's closest ally, China, also reported on the North's announcement in detail. Chinese news outlets emphasized how Chinese journalists are among those from the 5 countries invited to witness the demolition. Japan, however, was the only participant in the 6-party talks not invited to send reporters, despite its latest efforts to get involved in the North Korea issue. The North has been repeating that unless Japan repents for its past wrongdoings, it'll not normalize ties with Tokyo. Pyongyang also published commentary on Saturday, accusing Japan of using what it called the already settled issue of Japanese abductees in the North to, quote, foolishly hinder the peaceful atmosphere on the Korean peninsula. It listed Japan's wrongdoings in its colonization of Korea in the early 1900s and warned that only redemption of the past can help Japan. Japanese media seemed upset that the North excluded them. A number of outlets claimed Sunday that the nuclear test site could always be restored if it's not completely destroyed, and that the demolition could be staged. The right-wing's Hankei Shimbun even said the event is being used to earn the regime foreign currency. There has been no official statement yet from Tokyo. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he and Chinese President Xi Jinping are working to give Chinese telecom company ZTE, quote, a way to get back into business fast after being crippled by a U.S. ban, a concession to Beijing ahead of high-stakes trade talks this week. The proposed reversal is likely to ease some tensions that have built between U.S. and China, the world's two biggest economies, after their multi-billion-dollar tariff tit-for-tat battle in recent weeks. ZTE was forced to suspend its main operations after the U.S. Commerce Department banned American companies from selling to the firm for 7 years after the Chinese phone maker was caught illegally shipping U.S. goods to Iran. Now, exactly 30 days to go before Koreans head to the polls for the local elections. And today is also the deadline for the National Assembly to process the resignations for lawmakers running for local office. But with Parliament at a deadlock still, it remains to be seen whether rival political parties will be able to reach an agreement to hold a plenary session to accept their resignations today. For more, we connect to our political correspondent Kim Min-ji, who is live for us at the Parliament. Min-ji, we are learning that floor leaders of the rival political parties will be meeting up with Assembly Speaker soon this morning to attempt to reach a compromise.
That's right, Simon. In about 15 minutes from now, the floor leaders of the country's four negotiating parties will be sitting down with the National Assembly Speaker. We've had these meetings every week, but for April and May, there have been more arguments than achievements. But with today being the last day to accept the resignation of the four lawmakers running for local elections, and in order to hold by-elections in the vacant districts alongside the local elections in June, rival parties will have to agree to hold a plenary session today. If not, the by-elections will be pushed back to April 2019. Now, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the Liberal Party for Democracy and Peace and Justice Party have said they would attend, but the Conservative Liberty Korea Party and the centrist Paramita Party remain extremely reluctant. In order to go ahead, support from a majority of lawmakers present is needed, which adds up to 147 seats. Now, the three parties together, along with independent lawmakers, make 149. It's the first meeting since the new floor leader of the ruling party took the helm, so we will have to see if they can find middle ground in regards to the independent counsel probe into the online rigging scandal that's deepened their divide, and that it brings about a breakthrough.
Right, we'll be watching that throughout the day and hopefully see some positive developments after this protracted standstill at the Parliament. Min-ji, we are also learning that there has been a meeting earlier this morning for measures between the ruling party and the government for measures aimed at creating more jobs in the private sector.
That's right. The government is seeking to expand the number of jobs in the private sector through boosting job quality in the transport and infrastructure sectors and through improved support for startups. The officials present noted that job market conditions remain dire and that related ministries need to come up with effective measures to tackle the problem. The ruling party says job creation is the best welfare policy and the core of achieving growth. Now, the party noted that the government has achieved substantial job growth in the public sector. However, that hasn't been the case in the private sector. It emphasized the need to foster human resources in sectors with high potential, such as smart cities, drones, and autonomous driving. The meeting also touched upon the government's extra budget bill that's still sitting at the National Assembly, saying it was drawn up to breathe life into regions facing an employment crisis and corporate restructuring and for the creation of jobs for Korea's young people. And they called on the Assembly for their cooperation in order to get it passed swiftly. Back to you, HeungMin.
Thank you, our Kim Min-ji at the National Assembly. Now to an accident involving two planes at an airport in Turkey. An Asiana Airlines A330 sliced through the vertical stabilizer of a Turkish Airlines Airbus A321 at Istanbul's Ataturk International Airport on Sunday, causing damage to both jets, and a small fire break out on the Turkish plane. Now, this all happened while the Korean carrier was taxiing prior to a scheduled departure to South Korea's Incheon International Airport. The Turkish Airlines plane was parked at its gate when it got struck by the 330, but the security camera footage does show that the Turkish plane being close to the taxiway when the contact happened. No injuries was reported, but passengers are facing flight delays, and an investigation has already been launched. Now to sports, South Korean striker Heung-min has written himself into the history books, becoming the first Asian player to finish the English Premier League season among the top 10 goal scorers. The Tottenham Hotspur forward found the back of the net 12 times during the EPL season that came to an end on Sunday. Son also scored 4 goals in the Champions League and 2 during FA Cup matches for a total of 18 goals in all competitions. South Korean telecom companies have agreed to share the cost of building a shared 5G network infrastructure. It's expected to save close to $1 billion over the next 10 years and speed up the commercialization process of that technology. Our Park Se-young has more.
Next-generation 5G networks use high frequencies to generate high-speed connections, but they require up to 18 times the number of base stations than needed for 4G networks. Korea's telecom companies and internet service providers will share the cost of building the infrastructure for a 5G network, which they will then share the use of. According to the Ministry of Science and ICT, this could save nearly $940 million over the next 10 years, as it would prevent the companies from making redundant investments. Details on the amount each firm will pay are set to be finalized within the first half of this year. Other companies are set to pay KT, which has the highest number of facilities around the country, to share its essential equipment, such as electricity pylons, for network construction purposes. Local governments and national facility management agencies were also ordered to provide equipment.
An annual construction cost of $36 million and up to $940 million over the next 10 years in investment costs can be saved.
According to the senior ministry official, Korea's goal is to lead the fourth industrial revolution and to support the early commercialization of 5G technology. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
And now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we start in Indonesia. A family of 6 launched a wave of suicide bombings on Sunday in the country's second largest city, killing at least 13 people and wounding 40 others. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Do Adam at the News Center. Adam, these attacks are being described as the worst since the Bali bombings in 2005, which killed 20. What do we know so far?
Well, Simon, we know that the family of 6 were inspired by the Islamic State group, which has claimed responsibility for the attacks. It didn't mention anything about families or children taking part and said there were only 3 attackers. But local police say the husband and father of 4 detonated a car bomb in front of a church. Minutes later, his wife and 2 daughters, the youngest of whom was just 9 years old, attacked a second church, and a third was targeted by 2 sons aged 18 and 16 using a motorcycle with bombs on their laps. Now, police said the family had returned to Indonesia from Syria, where until recently the Islamic State group controlled significant territory. President Joko Widodo visited the scene of the attacks, describing them as barbaric and beyond the limits of humanity. Pope Francis also offered his prayers for the victims. Streets around the bombed churches were blocked and heavily armed police stood guard as forensic and bomb squad officers combed the area for clues. The attacks are the deadliest in Indonesia linked to IS in recent years and the worst since October 2005, when 3 suicide bombers blew themselves up in Bali restaurants, killing 20 people. Although Indonesia has had some success in cracking down on terrorism, there has been a resurgence of Islamic attacks in recent years amid the rise of IS overseas. In other news, a U.S. delegation that includes President Trump's daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner has arrived in a tense Jerusalem a day ahead of the opening of the new U.S. embassy. They were welcomed Sunday by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump pledged to move the embassy there from Tel Aviv after recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital last year. He also told an event in Indiana last week that he saved almost $1 billion on plans to move the embassy to Jerusalem. The move has infuriated Israel's regional rival Palestine, which wants its own future state with its capital in East Jerusalem. Trump's announcement also ended decades of U.S. neutrality on the Israel-Palestine tensions and put a possible peace deal between them in jeopardy. Most of the international community has criticized Trump's decision, and this discontent was underscored by the absence of most envoys to Israel during Sunday's reception. President Trump will not be at Monday's ceremony, but instead will address the event via a video message. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets of central Moscow on Sunday to demand the Russian government unblock the messaging app Telegram. It was the second demonstration since Russian authorities blocked the popular messaging service last month. Protesters chanted anti-government slogans and brandished signs denouncing Moscow's move to censor the internet, which critics believe is aimed at closing avenues for dissent. Local media reports that more than 20 protesters were detained. Chinese state media have shown footage of the country's first home-built aircraft carrier undergoing sea trials. The vessel, temporarily named Type 001A, left port in the northeastern city of Dalian on Sunday. The carrier was launched about a year ago but has since been fitted with weapons and other equipment. It is due to go into service by the year 2020 and will become China's second aircraft carrier. Beijing is trying to modernize its naval fleet to rival the world's leading maritime powers, including the U.S. Navy.
Good morning. Dense fog caused some headaches for those on the roads this morning, limiting the visibility. But that fog will burn off and sunshine is expected by lunchtime. And it's going to feel like summer this afternoon. Daegu and Gyeongju will have highs at 30 degrees Celsius, feeling more like mid-July. And for other regions, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 25 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju will make it to 23 and 24 degrees respectively. Aside from very warm temperatures, strong UV rays will shine down on us all day, so we will have very high UV levels all day today. And also stagnant air has led to some dust in the northern regions, and ultrafine dust levels will remain relatively high today. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that is it for us at the hour on Arirang News. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back right here at the same time tomorrow. Have a great start of your day and the week ahead, and goodbye for now.